A black woman in turn greeted a deaf visitor in sign language, unaware that the CEO was watching every move of her. In that marble lobby where corporate hypocrisy shone brighter than the waxed floor. I'm sorry, sir, but I can't understand what you're trying to tell Emmy, said the receptionist, with that tone of ill-concealed irritation that privileged people use when they encounter any inconvenience in their perfect routines. The man in the elegant suit gestured desperately, her hands dancing in the air in a language that no one there seemed to understand. His shoulders began to slump under the familiar weight of exclusion, that silent defeat that people like he knew all too well. Jasmine Williams, 24, watched the scene from across the lobby as she balanced a tray of expensive coffees for executives who barely knew her name. 3 months as an intern at the prestigious Reynolds Corporation had been enough for her to understand how that world worked. Fake smiles, superficial courtesy, and zero tolerance for anything that disrupted the flow of the corporate machine. But when she saw that man being treated like an inconvenience, something inside her refused to accept yet another injustice, disguised as professional protocol. His feet moved before his mind could reason about the possible consequences. He approached the counter, set the tray aside, and raised his hands with the fluid grace of someone who had spent years perfecting every gesture. Hello, sir, can I help you? His hands formed the words that his voice could not convey in the same way. His face lit up, as if someone had turned on a light in a dark room. Thank you, I thought no one here would understand me, he replied, his gestures laden with genuine relief. The entire lobby stopped, conversation ceased, footsteps slowed, and all eyes turned to this unexpected scene. A black intern conversing fluently in sign language with a visitor whom the receptionist had dismissed as a problem. What Jasmine didn't know was that Lawrence Reynolds, the company's CEO, had just stepped out of the executive elevator and was witnessing every second of that interaction. His gray eyes, known for dismantling seasoned executives with a single glance, now watched with a different intensity, as if he were seeing something he had long sought without knowing. But neither Jasmine nor Lawrence could have predicted that this simple display of humanity was about to unleash the fury of someone who considered any act of kindness a personal threat to her own mediocrity. Across the lobby, Victoria Sterling, supervisor of the marketing department, watched the scene with a kind of anger that only insecure people feel when they witness genuine competence. His eyes narrowed as he calculated exactly how to turn this moment of compassion into a public lesson on knowing your place. What Victoria didn't realize was that every cruel word she was about to utter would be remembered with photographic precision by someone who had the power to completely rewrite the ending of this story. If you want to find out how a simple act of kindness can reveal people's true character and set off a chain of events that no one could have predicted, be sure to subscribe to the CHANNEL, because what happened in the next few minutes would forever change the lives of everyone involved in this story. Well, what a touching scene. Victoria's sharp voice cut through the lobby like a blade, echoing off the marble so that everyone could hear it perfectly, and in turn playing professional interpreter. How adorable. Jasmine felt the blood freeze in her veins. All eyes in the lobby turned to her, including those of executives who, until then, had not even known of her existence. Victoria Sterling approached with calculated steps, her heels echoing like a countdown to public humiliation. Sorry to interrupt this performance, Victoria continued, sarcasm dripping from every word, but we have protocols in this company. Interns do not interpret for clients. That's what certified professionals are for. The deaf man looked confused between the two women, clearly sensing the tension even without hearing the venomous words. Jasmine quickly interpreted. I apologize, sir. It seems I overstepped my bounds. Exactly? Victoria smiled coldly. Jasmine, isn't it? 3 months here, and already thinking you're Indispensable? How ambitious. The word ambitious came out of her mouth, like an insult. Lawrence Reynolds stood, motionless near the elevators, observing every nuance of that interaction. His experienced eyes, skilled at reading people, captured every micro gesture, every inflection of voice, every demonstration of character being revealed under pressure. Signora Victoria, Jasmine tried to keep her voice steady. I was just helping. He needed what he needed. Victoria interrupted him brutally. Was a qualified professional, not an intern, who decided to show off to get attention. Do you think a few hand gestures are going to impress anyone here? The receptionist smiled, discreetly, clearly pleased to see someone else being humiliated for failing to solve a problem she had created. Other employees began to gather, drawn to the public drama like flies to the honey of someone else's misfortune. Jasmine took a deep breath, and something in her gaze changed. For a split second, Victoria might have noticed that this young woman wasn't being broken by the humiliation. She was being forged by her. I understand your concern, Jasmine said, her voice taking on an unexpected serenity. It wasn't her intention to cause trouble, her intention. Victoria laughed loudly. Honey, you're a 3-month intern. His intentions are irrelevant. His job is to bring coffee, make copies, and learn to be invisible until he earns the right to have opinions. A deaf man gently touched her arm and signaled, You don't have to apologize for being kind. Thank you for your help. When Jasmine translated his words to the audience, something interesting happened. Some faces showed genuine discomfort with Victoria's unnecessary cruelty, but Victoria didn't notice. She was too busy savoring his moment of power. How dramatic. Victoria rolled her eyes. Jasmine, you have work to do. I suggest you return to her actual responsibilities and leave professional matters to those who really understand the subject. That's when Jasmine did something no one expected. Instead of cowering or running away, she turned to his deaf man and signaled with fluid, elegant gestures. Sir, it was an honor to help you. I hope you find exactly what you're looking for at this company. The fluidity and naturalness of his movements made even Victoria stop talking for a moment. These weren't the clumsy gestures of someone who had memorized a few phrases. It was the fluent communication of someone who truly mastered that language. A man smiled and replied in sign language, his gestures quick and expressive. Jasmine laughed, a genuine warm laugh before interpreting. He said he rarely meets someone who communicates so naturally, and that he has a meeting scheduled with the CEO about an accessibility project. The silence in the lobby became almost palpable. Victoria blinked several times, slowly processing that this was not just any visitor, but someone important enough to have a direct meeting with Lawrence Reynolds. Well, Victoria tried to regain control of the situation. I'm sure Mr. Reynolds will arrange for a suitable interpreter for her meeting. Actually, a deep voice cut through the tension like an axe. I believe I've already found the perfect interpreter. Everyone turned to see Lawrence Reynolds approaching the group, her presence filling the space like a magnetic field. Victoria paused instantly. How much of that conversation had the CEO witnessed? Mr. Reynolds? Victoria stammered. I was just explaining the company protocols for publicly humiliating an employee who has demonstrated exceptional competence and genuine kindness. Lawrence asked, his voice calm but laden with an authority that made Victoria take a step back. Jasmine remained motionless, but her eyes met Lawrence's for a brief moment. In that look he saw something that reminded him of his own daughter, the same quiet determination, the same refusal to let herself be broken by small people in positions of temporary power. Jasmine, Lawrence said without taking his eyes off Victoria, join me and Mr. Martinez for the meeting. It seems you are exactly the person we need for this project. As the three headed for the elevators, Lawrence added casually, but loud enough for the entire lobby to Here, Victoria, see you in my office in an hour. We have a lot to talk about regarding leadership and protocols. Jasmine stepped into the elevator, still processing what had just happened, but a part of her, a part that Victoria had completely underestimated, wasn't surprised at all, because sometimes when you grow up being underestimated because of his color, his gender, his background, you develop a special intuition. You learn to identify who really has power and who just pretends, and you learn to wait for the right moment. What Victoria Sterling didn't know was that Jasmine Williams hadn't learned sign language by accident, nor had she developed that serenity under pressure for no reason, and she definitely didn't know that the young intern she had just tried to humiliate had spent the last few years caring for a deaf younger brother, facing exactly this kind of prejudice and discrimination every day. As the elevator doors closed, Jasmine allowed herself a small but meaningful smile. Victoria had made the classic mistake of insecure people attacking someone without first finding out who he was really up against, and that, as she would soon discover, had been a very, very costly mistake. The meeting in Lawrence Reynolds' office lasted 2 hours and completely changed Jasmine's perspective on that company. Mr. Martinez wasn't just any visitor. He was Diego Martinez, founder of the largest corporate accessibility organization in the country, evaluating Reynolds Corporation for $1 million partnership. Her interpretation was exceptional, Diego signaled to Jasmine, while Lawrence watched intently. But, more importantly, you understood not only her words, but her intentions. That's rare. Jasmine had interpreted faithfully, but internally she was processing a shocking revelation. Lawrence Reynolds spoke sign language, not fluently, but enough to follow basic conversations. He had understood every word exchanged in the lobby, including all of Victoria's insults. Mr. Martinez is right, Lawrence said, his eyes meeting his own. His brother must be very proud to have a sister who masters communication in this way. Jasmine stopped interpreting for a moment. How did he know about Danny? I did a quick search, Lawrence explained with a half smile. Danny Williams, 17, captain of the deaf school's basketball team, full scholarship for graphic design. His parents each work 2 jobs to support the family, and you work part-time at a restaurant in addition to your internship here to help with the family bills. The vulnerability Jasmine had carefully hidden for months was now exposed before the company's most powerful CEO. But instead of feeling embarrassed, she noticed something different in Lawrence's gaze. Genuine respect. Diego, I need to tell you something, Lawrence continued. My daughter was deaf. Sarah passed away 3 years ago in an accident, but she taught her the basics of sign language before her voice faltered briefly. She always said that people who truly understand communication don't just translate words, they translate souls. The silence in the office was broken only by the discreet sound of Jasmine interpreting Lawrence's words for Diego, who nodded with deep understanding. That's why this project is so important to me, Lawrence continued. It's not just about compliance or corporate image. It's about creating an environment where people like Sarah, like Danny, never feel invisible or overlooked. Diego turned to Jasmine and signaled something that made her blush slightly. He asked if you would agree to lead the implementation of the company's accessibility program, not as an intern, as a senior consultant. Senior consultant, Jasmine murmured, barely believing the words coming out of her own mouth. With a corresponding salary, your own office, and the autonomy to hire a team, Lawrence added. What do you say? While Jasmine processed the magnitude of that offer, Victoria Sterling furiously tapped away at her keyboard 3 floors below, drafting emails to every influential person she knew in the company. Her strategy was simple: destroy Jasmine's credibility before she could consolidate any position. 2. Executive Board. She typed with fingers, trembling with rage. Subject, concerns, about improper favoritism of unqualified personnel. Victoria had decided that if she couldn't break Jasmine with public humiliation, she would destroy her through an internal political war. What she didn't know was that Lawrence Reynolds had anticipated exactly that reaction. Jasmine, Lawrence said as she was still absorbing the proposal. I need to warn you about something. Victoria will likely try to sabotage you in the coming days. She's not the type of person to accept losing prestige quietly. What do you mean, Mr. Reynolds? She will send emails questioning your qualifications, spread rumors about favoritism, possibly even try to create embarrassing situations for you publicly. It's her standard behavior when she feels threatened. Diego interrupted with a pointed question that made Jasmine smile for the first time in that conversation. He wants to know if you are prepared for a war and if you have your own strategies. Jasmine took a deep breath before answering, and something in his tone of voice changed completely, a calculated coldness that neither Lawrence nor Diego expected to hear. Mr. Reynolds, Mr. Martinez, you assume that I am just an innocent victim in this situation. And, for 3 months, I let everyone think exactly that. She stopped acting for a moment, making direct eye contact with Lawrence. Do you think a young black woman from the suburbs can survive 3 months in a toxic corporate environment like this without developing some defensive skills? Lawrence raised an eyebrow, clearly interested. Continue. Victoria has been sending derogatory emails about me to colleagues for 2 months. She documents every hostile interaction in intimate detail. She talks about inadequate interns who should know his place in conversations she thinks are private. Jasmine paused to let the information sink in. I recorded everything. The silence in the office became palpable. Diego leaned forward, clearly impressed by the revelation. Why? Lawrence asked simply. Because when you grow up being systematically underestimated, you learn that documentation is her only protection. Danny taught me that. He records all interactions with teachers who show prejudice against deaf students. Evidence, he always points out, is more powerful than outrage. Jasmine opened her purse and took out a small digital recorder. I have 47 hours of recorded conversations, including comments about interns who don't know his place, discussions about how people like her, she are hired only for superficial diversity, and at least -1 instances of Victoria instructing other employees to ignore my requests for help or information. Lawrence and Diego exchanged a look that mixed surprise with genuine admiration. Victoria makes the classic mistake of privileged people. Jasmine continued, her voice maintaining that icy serenity. She assumes that people like me are too naive or intimidated to defend themselves properly. She speaks freely because she believes her position protects her from any consequences. And how do you intend to use these recordings? Lawrence asked, though he already knew the answer. I haven't decided yet, but Victoria has 72 hours to prove what kind of person she really is. If he chooses escalation, he'll find out that he seriously underestimated who he's dealing with. Diego clapped slowly, his gestures conveying total approval of the strategy. There's one more thing, Jasmine added, a small but meaningful smile appearing on her lips. Victoria doesn't know that I speak 3 languages fluently, including Spanish. She has had several very interesting conversations with Hispanic suppliers, assuming that no one around her understood what was being said. Lawrence leaned back in her chair, processing the complexity of the young woman he had completely underestimated. Jasmine, do you accept our offer? I accept, but on one condition. What is it? I want complete autonomy to deal with Victoria Sterling as I see fit. No interference, no micromanagement. She chooses how this ends peacefully or as a lesson the entire company will never forget. The smile that spread across Lawrence Reynolds' face at that moment was the same smile that had built a corporate empire, pure recognition of her strategic mind meeting another Diego. Lawrence said, I believe we have found exactly the right person to revolutionize our approach to corporate communications. As the hiring papers were being prepared, none of the three realized that Victoria had decided to accelerate her own plans. At that very moment, she was sending a message to the city's leading corporate newspaper, offering an exclusive story about racial favoritism at Reynolds Corporation. What Victoria Sterling couldn't have imagined was that her declared war on air intern was about to turn into the most documented and meticulous public destruction documented by her, a destruction that the corporate world had witnessed in decades, and it would all begin in less than 24 hours when she would make the ultimate mistake of underestimating not only Jasmine Williams, but the quiet power of someone who had learned to plan her battles long before she fought them. The bomb exploded the next morning in a way Victoria Sterling could never have predicted. She had called an urgent executive board meeting to expose inappropriate hiring practices, confident that her behind-the-scenes war had undermined any credibility Jasmine might have had. Gentlemen, Victoria began her presentation with a venomous smile of someone who believes they hold all the cards. I have brought you here to discuss a serious case of favoritism that jeopardizes our corporate reputation. Lawrence sat silently at the head of the table, watching Victoria with the patience of a predator waiting for the perfect moment. Jasmine was present as a newly hired senior consultant, a title that made Victoria visibly grind her teeth. This person, Victoria pointed at Jasmine without even looking her in the eye, was promoted from intern to senior consultant in less than 24 hours. No qualifications, no experience, based on what? Victoria, Lawrence interrupted, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. Victoria hesitated for a split second, realizing too late that she had fallen into a trap. Well, obvious favoritism. We all know that certain hires are made based on quotas, not merit. The silence in the room became palpable. Some board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Interesting, Jasmine said calmly, turning on a small recorder in the center of the table. Victoria, do you mind if we play back some of his conversations about quotas and merit? Victoria's face instantly palled. That's illegal. You can't. Actually, Lawrence smiled coldly. Recordings made in common areas of the company are perfectly legal when they document systematic discrimination. Victoria's voice echoed through the room. Speakers, these diversity interns are all the same, hired to fill quotas. They know nothing and yet they think they deserve promotions. The faces around the table hardened progressively. Victoria tried to turn off the equipment, but Jasmine gently pushed her hand away. We have more. Jasmine continued with icy serenity. Victoria, do you remember this conversation with Sarah from HR about people like me? New recording. People like her need to learn to stay in their place, no matter how many nice gestures she makes. An intern is an intern, especially those who come from, you know, where. Victoria stood up abruptly, her voice rising an octave. That's out of context. You're distorting context. Jasmine repeated thoughtfully. You're right. Let's give full context. The meeting room screen lit up, displaying a detailed spreadsheet. 47 hours of recordings over 2 months. 23 discriminatory comments based on race. 31 derogatory references about people who don't know his place, and my favorite, a new recording. Victoria, laughing with colleagues about how the little black cleaning lady had been promoted to making coffee. I never, Victoria stammered, but his own voice contradicted her. Victoria, Lawrence, rose slowly, her authority filling the room. In 20 years of running this company, I have never witnessed such a systematic display of toxicity and discrimination. Lawrence, you can't believe her. It's a setup. She what? Diego Martinez entered the room at that exact moment, accompanied by 2 reporters and a Camera, sorry to interrupt, but when I heard there would be a discussion about discrimination at Reynolds Corporation, I thought it important to document it. For our corporate accessibility project, Victoria immediately realized she had fallen into the perfect trap. Not only was her career destroyed, her destruction was being broadcast live to the largest corporate inclusion project in the country. Victoria Sterling. Lawrence pronounced each word with surgical precision. You are terminated for cause. Security will accompany you to clear your desk. And Victoria, he paused, his eyes meeting her one last time. I strongly recommend you seek legal counsel. Jasmine has sufficient documentation for a discrimination lawsuit that will destroy any chance her of working in corporate communications again. As Victoria was escorted out, her protests echoing down the hallway, Jasmine remained calmly seated. There was no petty triumph in his face, only the quiet satisfaction of someone who had executed justice with surgical precision. Diego applauded slowly. Impressive. You documented systematic discrimination, exposed corporate toxicity, and turned her own humiliation into the ultimate downfall of those who attacked her. Lawrence nodded with genuine approval. Jasmine, you just gave our entire industry a masterclass on how to combat prejudice with strategic intelligence. But the real twist was yet to come, because Victoria Sterling didn't know that Jasmine had sent copies of all the recordings to the city's leading corporate newspaper, the same newspaper Victoria had contacted to expose the alleged favoritism. The afternoon edition's headline would not only destroy Victoria, but serve as an example to every toxic executive who underestimated people who were different. Executive fired for systematic discrimination. Recordings revealed 2 months of racist comments at major corporation. The war was over before Victoria even realized she was fighting someone infinitely more prepared, strategic, and intelligent than her arrogance had allowed her to recognize. 6 months later, the headline that destroyed Victoria Sterling still echoed through the corporate world as a grim warning. Former executive sued for systematic discrimination, loses everything in $1 million court battle. Victoria had desperately tried to rebuild her career, but she quickly discovered that a reputation destroyed by irrefutable evidence offers no second chances. No reputable company would risk hiring someone whose discriminatory recordings had become a case study in business ethics courses. His penthouse apartment sold to pay lawyers. His elite social circle evaporated the moment her toxicity became public. Her corporate connections cut off contact as if she were radioactive. Meanwhile, Jasmine Williams had become the most sought-after accessibility consultant in the country. His department at Reynolds Corporation had expanded into an entire division, generating millions in contracts and positioning the company as a national leader in corporate inclusion. Jasmine Lawrence said during the quarterly board meeting, his division has increased our revenue by 340% this year. More importantly, we have completely changed our corporate culture. Diego Martinez, now an official partner in a nationwide project, proudly pointed out, you didn't just create a program, you created a movement. Companies across the country are copying his model. Dani, now 18, regularly visited her sister's office, an office with a panoramic view of the city, where a gold plaque on the door read Jasmine Williams, Executive Director of Accessibility and Inclusion. Do you remember when I said that one day he would see? Dani signaled with a beaming smile. You didn't just prove your worth, you redefined what worth means. Jasmine's transformation transcended numbers and titles. She had become a national voice at corporate conferences. Her TEDx talks on turning discrimination into opportunity racked up millions of views, and universities vied for her presence as a speaker. Mr. Parker, promoted to security coordinator after years of exemplary service, watched the lobby where it all began. Every day, Miss Jasmine changed this company, he would tell new employees, but more than that, she proved that Strategic kindness is more powerful than mindless cruelty. Rin's corporation had become a national benchmark. Jasmine's accessibility program was studied at Harvard. His inclusion protocols were adopted by Fortune 500 corporations, and the company received international awards for social responsibility. Victoria, meanwhile, had moved to a small town where no one knew his story. She worked at a local accounting firm for a salary that barely covered the rent on a modest apartment, a dizzying fall for someone who had once commanded entire departments. Occasionally, Victoria would search for Jasmine's name online and find new evidence of his meteoric success. Another award, another accolade, another headline celebrating the woman she had tried to destroy. What knotted Victoria most was not just her own downfall, it was the belated realization that Jasmine had always been exactly what she claimed to be: genuinely talented, strategically brilliant, and morally superior. Her attempt at humiliation had only revealed her own mediocrity. Lawrence Reynolds, transformed by the experience, had instituted the Sarah program named in honor of her daughter, offering full scholarships to young people from marginalized communities interested in communication and accessibility. Jasmine personally oversaw each application. "Do you know what I've learned?" Lawrence said to Jasmine during a private conversation. "My daughter did not die in vain if her story helped me recognize genuine talent when I finally found it." The company had become a magnet for diverse talent, not because of quotas or external pressures, but because Jasmine had proven that real inclusion generates extraordinary results. Professionals from all backgrounds competed for positions in a corporation that truly valued merit combined with character. Danny graduated as the top student in her class in graphic design and was immediately hired by Reynolds' marketing division. On his first day at work, he signaled to Jasmine, "Now we're officially co-workers." Jasmine's revenge had transcended personal punishment. It had become a systemic revolution. She hadn't just taken down a toxic person, she had built a model of how organizations can thrive when they genuinely embrace diversity. Victoria Sterling had tried to reduce Jasmine to stereotypes and limitations. In response, Jasmine had become a transformative force that redefined entire industry standards. The inappropriate intern now led changes that impacted thousands of lives. The lesson was crystal clear: when you try to destroy someone out of prejudice, you're not only revealing his own flawed character, you are potentially creating the catalyst for her own replacement by someone infinitely better. Jasmine Williams proved that the best revenge is not to repay cruelty with cruelty, but to turn discrimination into fuel for such absolute success that it renders any future attempts at minimization irrelevant. If this story of transformation and justice touched his heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that our origins never define our destiny, only his determination to turn obstacles into extraordinary opportunities.